an absolute bombshell of a story dropped the other day. It's from ProPublica, and they did some phenomenal investigative reporting, and they found that rich people, mega rich people, are basically dodging all of their taxes. So they title it, "The Secret IRS Files, Trove of Never-Before-Seen Records Reveal How the Wealthiest Avoid Income Tax." Okay. So, they talk about this thing that they call a true tax rate, which means it's kind of like the real tax rate, the effective tax rate for the people who are like the fraction of the top 1%, the mega billionaires. And it turns out they're getting away with highway robbery and paying less than everybody else and their mother. So first, let me show you the chart here that they give us. This is really the meat of the information. So Warren Buffett, between the years, I think it's 2014 and 2018, Warren Buffett had his wealth grow by $24.3 billion. Now, in that time frame, he only reported income of $125 million, so his total taxes paid was just $23.7 million. So the percentage of tax that he paid is just 0.10%. 0.10. Jeff Bezos, his wealth grew by $99 billion in that time frame. He only reported $4.22 billion in income. He paid $973 million in taxes, which gives him an effective true tax rate of 0.98%. Michael Bloomberg made $22.5 billion in that time frame. He reported $10 billion in income, so total taxes paid was $292 million, which puts his true tax rate at 1.30%. And then you have Elon Musk here. He reported, his wealth grew $13.9 billion. His total income reported was $1.52 billion. He paid $455 million in taxes, and so his true effective tax rate was 3.27%. So, the bottom line is this. They have an army of lawyers and specialists who work day and night to find the legal loopholes to make it so they pay as little as humanly possible. Now, beyond that, there's this legal distinction that's made between income and wealth growth. And in fact, there was a Supreme Court case a long time ago where the Supreme Court decided, yeah, your wealth growth isn't taxed. Your income can be taxed, but your wealth growth isn't taxed because it's not really yours until you cash out, until you sell it. And that set up a situation where many wealthy CEOs, what they do is they'll say like, oh, I'm only taking a salary of the median or average U.S. salary of $70,000 a year. And so they try to make it seem like, see, I'm doing all this work and I'm doing it for basically nothing. I'm only taking $70,000 a year. Some of the guys on this list say, my salary is only $1 a year. So, but that's a trick. That's a trick is what that is. What they're doing is they're finding ways to avoid paying taxes even though their wealth is growing exponentially. Their wealth is growing by tens of billions of dollars, but they're not taxed on it. So let me give you some more information about this because this stuff is out of this world. By the end of 2018, the 25 wealthiest Americans were worth $1.1 trillion. For comparison, that would take 14.3 million ordinary American wage earners put together to equal that same amount of wealth. So 25 billionaires here. It would take 14.3 million ordinary Americans to equal that same amount of wealth. Get this. The personal federal tax bill for the top 25 billionaires in 2018 was $1.9 billion. The bill for the wage earners, $143 billion. There are even years where these billionaires paid nothing in taxes, and there was even a year, I think it was 2011, where Jeff Bezos got a rebate from the government. He got like $4,000 for his kids or something like that. And it's not just him. There's many of them have a bunch of years. I think Warren Buffett was another. He paid nothing in income tax. George Soros paid nothing in income tax for some years. Or excuse me, paid nothing in federal taxes for those years. There's a great chart. I don't think I have it pulled up here, but your average American between 2014 and 2018, they paid more in taxes than their wealth grew in that period. Your average American paid more in taxes than their wealth grew in that period. Whereas these guys, the exact opposite. They're paying nothing in taxes and their wealth is just skyrocketing. So, I mean, stop and think about the system that we've set up here. We've set up what's effectively a regressive tax system, which means the wealthier you are, the lower your effective tax rate is. We've always talked about this in the context of what's called the capital gains tax. For those of you who don't know, capital gains is if you invest in the stock market and you make money from your investments, that's taxed at a much lower rate than if you actually work for a living. So if you work for a living and you pay the income tax, let's say you make like $80,000 a year, I don't know exactly what bracket that puts you in, but it's like 15 or 20% or 25%. The capital gains tax was 15% for the longest time. I think now did they move it up a little bit? I don't remember, but the capital gains tax rate is lower than the income tax rate for average or slightly above average earners. So in other words, like there's the classic example, when Mitt Romney was running against Barack Obama in 2012, Mitt Romney didn't want to release his taxes for the longest time. Now, eventually he did. But the reason he didn't want to release it is because he was paying 15% on, I think it was tens of millions of dollars in income. And, you know, you could be, if you're somebody who does well, let's say you're a physical therapist and you make like $120,000 a year or something like that. That physical therapist is paying more in taxes on $120,000 in income than Mitt Romney is on tens of millions of dollars in his income. Oh, but it's different because his income is capital gains, which means he gambled for a living to make that money, so he gets to pay less in taxes. How does that make any sense? By the way, doesn't that incentivize not working? Right? Wouldn't you want to incentivize wage labor so you should tax it less? But no, they flip it on its head. Why? Because it's the wealthy. The people who already have money are making more money through the stock market, so it's like, okay, let's tax them much lower. By the way, an astonishing fact that you learn in this phenomenal piece from ProPublica, and everybody needs to check it out. Did you know that now the IRS has been destroyed in 1,000 different ways, but now the poor are more likely to get audited than the rich and corporations? What? The poor are more likely to get audited than the rich and corporations. If you're a multimillionaire or a billionaire, you're less likely to get audited than some schmuck who's making 30 grand in Alabama. What? You want to talk about a fundamentally broken system. The 400 richest Americans have more wealth than the bottom 150 million combined. So that means that about 400 of the richest Americans almost have more than half of the country combined. This is where we are now. There was that report that came out a few years back, which found for the first time, effectively, you had billionaires paying a lower tax rate than the working class. So this really is out of this world. This is as bad as it gets. And I want to give you another fact. This came out a day later from Public Citizen, but the 55 largest corporations paid $0 in federal corporate income taxes in 2020 and spent $450 million on lobbying and political contributions in recent years. The 55 largest corporations paid $0 in federal corporate income tax. So, I mean, listen, I could go on and on all day about how rigged the tax system is against regular people. But, of course, the response from many of these billionaires, the ones who responded, some of them didn't even respond, but the response from many of them was, hey, listen, I'm paying whatever I legally have to pay. And so if it's 0.1% or if it's 1.5% or if it's 3%, shut the fuck up and take it. It's the best you're getting out of me. Isn't that amazing? These people are phenomenally wealthy. They have more money than you can spend in a fucking lifetime. And they're defending paying that incredibly low rate because, hey, I have a team of lawyers and a team of experts, and we find ways to legally pay no taxes. So listen, honestly, this is a joke. And even the types of reforms that we're talking about wouldn't necessarily address the problem. Like if you raise the top marginal tax rate from 35% or 37% to 39%, that doesn't address this. Because again, that's the top marginal tax rate for income. Well, if they're not taking a lot of income and it's all through wealth growth, what we need is a wealth tax. And all you have to do is take like 2% or 3% of their net worth, and then they're paying way more. Because 2% or 3% of their net worth is a lot of money. Especially when you're talking about, there are reports that Bezos might be a trillionaire by, I forgot when the date was. Is it like a decade from now or something? A trillionaire. So listen, if you look at these facts and you're not in favor of redistribution of wealth and steep taxes on the wealthy, I don't know what to say to you. I think you have your head firmly planted in your ass. I mean, and this is on top of the Rand Corporation study that I always reference on this show, which proved that from the 1970s until today, top fraction of the top 1% has stolen $47 trillion from the bottom 90%. So if you just kept the pay ratio and the wealth distribution the same as it was in the 1960s, the bottom 90% would be $4.7 trillion richer today. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting the infrastructure number mixed up with this number. $47 trillion. That's the right number. So that means every American in the bottom 90% would have an extra $1,144 per month for the rest of their lives if you just kept the wealth distribution the same as in the 1960s. That's how much they're screwing you. That's how much the system is rigged. So here we are. Now, they're going to release more stuff. ProPublica says they're going to release more stuff about the specifics of how they legally dodge the taxes. And I can't wait to see the details of that. But, I mean, this is grotesque. Nobody can defend this system. This is a system of, by, and for the wealthy. The wealthy have bought the government. They are oligarchs, and they have full control. Corporations and billionaires have full control of our government. And so you see numbers like this, and there's barely a whimper. The wealth tax was pushed by like two people, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and now they're not even talking about it. Biden's not even bringing it up. He's even backing off of the marginal income tax increases. It's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? How long can people sit back and take this? I mean, we need top-down reform, man. We absolutely do. It's unacceptable that we have a regressive tax system and billionaires pay less than average Americans. I mean, it makes people feel like a sucker for paying their taxes. And by the way, as I've told you guys 1,000 times, I think the more progressive position is that for people who are poor or middle income, they should get a tax cut. I think that's the more progressive position. They should pay less in taxes and get more services. And you should raise taxes on the wealthy more. That's the real progressive position. I've never seen a tax cut for the working class that I didn't like. And I'm an ardent lefty. And that's how I feel about it. These guys should be paying the tax. These guys should. And don't tell me that it's a meritocracy and they somehow fucking earned it. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's not like the harder you work, the further you go. The hardest working person I ever met in my life was living around the poverty line. He worked 3 jobs and can barely get by. It's not the harder you work, the further you go. It's not that at all. So that's a myth. We don't live in a meritocracy. The only way to get back to some semblance of a meritocracy is to steeply raise taxes on the wealthy, steeply raise taxes on corporations, and redistribute to give everybody health care, everybody a good education, everybody paid time off. I mean, this is sick, man. This is sick. So there you have it. What a bombshell story from ProPublica. I mean, I give them so much credit for what they did here. They got a leak, I guess, from somebody in the IRS, but they didn't give the specifics as to who it is. I guess the person is a whistleblower. But it really goes to show you just how backwards the system is, just how much billionaires and corporations get away with. And that's the point, because, again, they bought a government. They effectively own the government. So they're deciding to give themselves colossal tax breaks to basically rob everybody else blind. And average Americans are working crazy hours and paying a much higher tax rate and have so much less. I mean, this is really, you're really flirting with pitchforks time, baby. That's where we're at with this. So we better do some real reform ASAP, or it can get ugly. And when I say ugly, I mean really ugly. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.